Welcome everyone to CMTC's webinar series. My name is Gabby Richard Harrington. I'm the president of New England ISTE and I will be your webinar moderator for today. A bit of housekeeping, the session is being recorded. The video will be posted on CMTC 19's YouTube channel and may be shared with others for their viewing pleasure. If you need a certificate of participation of any kind, you can contact Kimra, and I will put that email address in the chat. It's kymra@nhsaa.org. Please post questions in the chat. We'll feed questions to the presenters. That takes care of housekeeping. So today is March 5th, 2020, and we're happy today to welcome Alma and Teresa Schneider-Heinz from Alma, along with Anna Logan. And we're also thrilled to welcome Tom Murray from FutureReady. So with that, you could introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more about yourselves. And I will stop the share and let you take over from here.
Sure. Thanks, Gabby, for the introduction. Let me pull up my presentation here. My name is Teresa Schneider-Heinz. I am the regional sales representative for Alma for New Hampshire and Vermont. I am a recently retired veteran educator / digital learning specialist in New Hampshire. And I recently decided to take the leap of faith and try a new profession and joined a great company known as Alma. So like you said, Anna and Tom are here with us also today. I'm going to toss it over to Anna for a minute to get things rolling.
All right, thanks, Teresa. My name is Anna Logan. I'm Director of Sales Operations at Alma. Been working with this company for over 7 years, and I'm really excited to share a bit of our platform with you. We hope that everybody watching this webinar today will get to learn a little bit more about FutureReady schools, as well as how Alma supports a lot of the FutureReady framework. And we'll dive right in. If you want to go to the next slide. So to kick things off, I quickly want to speak about Alma's mission and ultimately what we're trying to accomplish with the SIS platform we've developed. Alma provides critical SIS tooling to empower educators to streamline day-to-day operations. So ultimately you can improve student outcomes. We believe that we can create the greatest generation of educators, so you in turn can create the greatest generation of students. Now we realize that's a really big claim, that's a very big mission, so we have a number of strategies that we employ to help get us there. So these 5 bullets will kind of guide us through those key points. And a lot of these you'll find as Tom starts talking, they really align pretty well with the FutureReady framework as well, which we love. So first and foremost, Alma is powerful yet intuitive. So many systems are one or the other, and we really marry the two together. It's critical that you have really powerful tools to support your needs, but you got to be able to use them easily. We also support conventional educational approaches as well as more progressive practices and everything in between. We always tell educators we'll meet you where you are today, and if you're moving towards something more progressive, whether it's competency-based learning or something more around personalized learning, we want to help you get there, but we also support all the traditional approaches as well. The third bullet here is around improving data quality. Obviously, you're capturing so much important information in Alma, and from the point that you're entering that data all the way to the point where you're submitting it to the state and state reports, we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to ensure the quality of that data is top notch. So that's making sure that from the point you're entering it, it's easy to use, the reports are easy to generate, and you can rely that we're providing the appropriate compliant format for those reports as well. The fourth bullet here is around community relationships. The SIS is a hub for so many different users. The entire district community gets involved here. So it can really be a resource for strengthening those relationships, whether that's from teacher to student or teacher to administration, or even with Alma, Alma to our users. We really want to make sure we're a part of that community, that we're empowering everybody to communicate well, and always keeping that growth mindset moving forward and improving on a daily basis. the final piece here is often something that's an afterthought when you're thinking about a student information system, the change management that goes along with it. But I will say we put this right at the front because it's absolutely critical when you're implementing an SIS that it's implemented well. If things go sideways, you're gonna have a lot of trouble down the road. So this is a big priority for us to make sure that when you are rolling over to Alma, you have support every step of the way and really a resource in us to make sure that's a success. So that's a bit about Alma. I think at this point, we're going to hand it over to Tom to talk more about the FutureReady framework. So fire away.
Hey everybody, Tom here. What an honor it is to be with my friends in the great state of New Hampshire today. I feel like I've been up there a whole lot in the last year and a half or so. I know I met many of you at the great conference about a year and a half ago. We did a FutureReady Manchester event. I did the CIO Summit about 2 years ago. And so it's always an honor to be with you all, to be in your state, work a bit alongside your State Department with different things. So first and foremost, hello and welcome. And thanks for having me today. You know, I do want to share, it's the Director of Innovation for FutureReady Schools. What's interesting for me in this webinar is having the opportunity to wear my FutureReady Schools hat and leading that nationally. But also, you may have caught on that initial slide, I'm a board member at Alma. I am not a paid employee at Alma. I will tell you, I've been on their board probably about 6 years now. The reason I share that is I always believe in starting with why and starting with our purpose. I spent 15 years in public schools as a teacher, as a principal, and then ultimately as a tech director. And just to share a quick story, because I think it'll show you some of the mindset related to that. In my last couple of years as a tech director, we had gone fully competency-based. And I share that because many of you, I know the state, you guys are such a leader as the state nationally when it looks at mastery or competency-based. We had been going, this is about 10 to 12 years ago now, we went fully competency-based in kindergarten through 12th grade. And what we found over time is the system that we were using, and I'm not going to throw any of the very large systems under the bus by any means, it was so limiting that we had to try and, when we were looking at mastery-based and things like that for grading, we were trying to get systems to trick certain things. And it was always this feeling of like, why can't it just work? I don't want things to average. We had points where grades started disappearing because we had all these workarounds. And so Alma had reached out through some connections through ed tech and things I was doing nationally and said, hey, we're looking for some board members that can really help push our thinking. And I was at a point 6 years ago, after many frustrations, our competency-based actually ended up falling apart shortly after I had left because of disappearing grades, because of poor communication with our community, because our system got in the way of what our kids needs, true story, and backing that up. And Alma had reached out and saying, here's what we're creating. We really want to create this all-in-one system that is very competency-based or mastery-based. I said, I am in, and jumped in with both feet, partially out of frustration of what maybe many of you have experienced in the past. I was tired of being on tier 12 support for 3 months and, you know, and those kinds of things. And so that's really my why. I share that just to be transparent of my why on getting on a board like Alma, saying, let's build something that's better because our kids need better. So jump to the next slide. But I want to put my FutureReady Schools hat on. And knowing that New Hampshire's been involved in the past in different ways, let me just give a couple snippets. FutureReady Schools is also a collaboration. You'll see, we call it the alphabet soup of organizations. So if you're a superintendent on this webinar, AASA. If you're a principal on this webinar, NAESP, NASSP. If you're on the tech side, ISTE and COSIN, among many, many others, all connections in this work. Go ahead to the next slide. Really a culmination and collaboration. I also know that many superintendents across your state have signed our FutureReady District Pledge. And working with a few thousand superintendents each year, I often joke, it's hard to get 10 superintendents to do the same thing. So we've gotten about, that says 3,400, about 3,500 superintendents across the nation have signed our FutureReady District Pledge. And if you look at the map on the left, we also work with different state departments. Proud to try and support New Hampshire, your state department, Stan, and some great folks there as well, just in different ways. We're not the notion of you have to do something this way or that way. We look to be supports in whatever way that we can. Next slide, if you could. I want to spend some time today really looking at some of the key components around the framework, but let me hit one or two other areas just for resources for you. If you're not aware, FutureReady also supports district leadership, principals, instructional coaches, librarians, as well as technology leaders. One of the things we're so proud of, though, is it's really practitioner-led. We don't want to be the 50,000-foot Washington, D.C., never been there, never done that, coming to you to tell you what you should do in their classrooms. So we're very much practitioner-led and practitioner-oriented. I encourage you to check out those strands. Next slide, if you could. Well, before we talk about the framework, I will also mention just last week in Digital Learning Day, which is something that we also run, if you're not familiar with that, we also launched a FutureReady school board strand, and that's something that we're launching really this month, and we'll be creating lots of tools and resources for your school board member, as well as for superintendents and other district leaders that work with school boards. But here's where I want to spend the majority of my few minutes this morning. It's around the FutureReady framework and being able to run this nationally, but yet be connected to a great company like Alma. There's so many real connections. And so when you take a look at the FutureReady framework, let me just take a minute or two to talk through it, but then really hit on some of the connections that you'll see today. When you take a look at the outside of the framework, it's that collaborative leadership, really that leadership in school culture truly lay the foundation for this work. And we all know that being inside of our schools, you know, in toxic school cultures without risk taking or the ability to make mistakes, innovation is not going to thrive. And that's why leadership holds it all together. To touch on the gears for just a moment, curriculum instruction assessment, we're going to spend a little bit of time with that. That's the teaching and learning side, starting at about 1 o'clock there. That's the heart and soul of what we do, the instructional components on that learning piece. If you go to the next one at about 2 o'clock, that's personalized professional learning. When you look at that gear, we don't call it professional development, we call it professional learning. I often joke, I've never met an educator that gets up in the morning and says, I can't wait to go be developed today, yet learning's the heart and soul of why we do what we do. When you take a look at the orange one, that's the budget and resources. In one word, that's looking at sustainability. The gray one there, community partnerships at about 6 o'clock. We'll spend just a few minutes with that there as well. Pretty self-explanatory. The green one, data and privacy. I know your state has done a lot of work as well around that in that area. We'll spend a little bit of time there. Robust infrastructure, the infrastructure side of things, connectivity, the ed tech side of things there as well as the use of space and time, learning spaces. And then time also touches really on that competency-based, mastery-based, looking at things, doing it differently. But when you look at the heart and soul, it is the student at the center. And so that's the FutureReady framework. The URL is down there at the bottom. Let's hop to the next slide because I want to spend a little bit of time in just really 3 key areas because we really believe that evidence-based is key. One of the things working nationally is we see a lot of things that are kind of either fly by night or here's the latest bandwagon, let's just hop on that bandwagon. And at FutureReady schools, we're never going to be that. We don't want to be that. We want to be really evidence-based, which is really the same philosophy behind a competency-based or mastery-based, like many of you are doing, of show me the evidence. How do I know? Kind of that so what, now what mentality. And so when we look at the framework that we shared, and then I'll dive into a couple of the gears here a little bit more in depth, is absolutely evidence-based. There's lots of research studies behind them, and they're the big bucket areas that you're all working on. Let's go ahead and hit to the next step if we could. Next slide. So my question for you is this, just for a moment of reflection there, and feel free to put information in the chat if you'd like, or just to process. When you think about your vision, you know, that idea of 5 to 10 years from now, what do you want it to look like? That 5 years from now, you walk back into your school, what do you want that idea, personalized or student-centered learning, what do you want it to look like? One thing that I know with working with so many school districts across the country, even in the same state, in a state like New Hampshire, we'll often use so many different words, this need for a common language. Some of you, maybe you do use personalized, maybe you do use a mastery-based or competency-based, but 5 years from now, what would you want that to look like and what's that vision? And so FutureReady is really helping districts as well strategically plan. We have data and assessments to be able to support that. But when you look at the framework, these are really those big bucket areas that you'll have to think about. We know obviously that teaching and learning side, that curriculum instruction assessment, the professional learning side are so core and really kind of those main 2 sections. But we forget about something like data and privacy and it all can go downhill. And we see those stories come out year after year, how districts are doing great things, but then there's a data breach or something happens or something falls apart and security gets in the way and all of a sudden our trust is shattered with our community. And so in working with districts in those different areas, there's a variety of supports. Let's dive a little bit into a couple of them and really some of their connections that I see as an Alma board member, but also in running FutureReady schools. So let's go to the next slide. So the 3 areas that I really want to focus on, and I think there's certainly, if we had more time today, we could touch on some of these other gears for sure, but the ones that are going to be clear as day to you are the curriculum instruction and assessment. Again, the heart and soul of why we do what we do, how we invest our time, our energy, and our dollars in that for the students that we all serve. Data and privacy, and we're not going to touch on the privacy piece here as well, but I know it's something almost certainly keeps front and center. But the data side and how do we use data to inform our practices, but to do it well through visualization and those kinds of things, as well as community partnerships and how we share out the information that we have and how we communicate with parents. Next slide. So let's talk quickly about the first one there. When we take a look at curriculum instruction and assessment, when I talk about being evidence-based with future-ready schools, some of the core areas we call elements, and you can see those elements there. I'm not going to read them to you where it says 21st century skills and deeper learning. You can see each of those different elements there. Those are some of the evidence-based or research-based elements that we would put inside curriculum instruction and assessment. For those of you, and we know a number of New Hampshire districts have utilized the FutureReady dashboard assessment, that leadership assessment, to help strategically plan and vision. And those are some of the areas that we get some of our different scores. If we jump to our next slide, I want to make a connection because what you're going to see in just a few minutes from the Alma team is how curriculum instruction and assessment and Alma can certainly connect here in that regard. For instance, the notion of personalized learning, and you see that at the heart of the framework, but how do we make things personal? How do we make it authentic for our students? How do we get away from kind of that one size fits all? And I know throughout your state and your district, you've been focused on that for a long time there. But the idea of leveraging technology, and then that last piece for assessments and how analytics can inform instruction. I know one of the things that when I put myself back to being a principal and a tech director, one of the biggest frustrations that we had is we were using 5 or 6, sometimes 7 different systems. One, we would do grading in one spot, we'd take attendance in another spot, we'd have to go to another spot to get something for benchmark assessments, we'd have to go to a different spot to get the report cards, and things were all over the place to the point where teachers sometimes didn't even remember their login to get to somewhere. And when we have a fractured system like that, ultimately our students lose out because things take more time for our teachers, things become more complicated. And if we're really going to leverage the power and harness the power of technology, it has to be seamless and work flawlessly together. And I think every one of us on this webinar has different pain points and knows exactly what we're talking about that. Nobody has that time when things aren't working or to look into 7 different systems. We need it to be in a way that's easy for teachers to understand, that ultimately supports instruction and not just does it in theory. So let's jump to the next gear and let me talk about that one for just a couple minutes. When we take a look at community partnerships, one of the stories, and the reason I started that story about things not going so well because of an SIS that didn't work well and did not do competency-based well and did not communicate well when we tried to do it differently, was really around community partnerships. We all know, and everyone on here I'm sure would agree, that our parents are so core to our success. Our community is so core to our success. When we take a look from a future-ready end, community partnerships, you can see some of the elements there, from local and community engagement, parent communication, this idea of district branding and being really cognizant with how we're putting out in our messaging there. If we jump to the next slide, again, with connecting to Alma, I'm putting my board member hat back on for a moment. Some of the things that I'm most proud of is taking some of those pain points that I had as a tech director and saying, hey, here's a problem we need to fix. And how do we fix this? So around that local and community engagement, which really goes hand in hand with that fourth one there around parent communication. Because if we move to a competency-based or we move to a mastery-based, and some of you might have been doing that for a decade already in that regard, when we take a look there, we know that parents have to be in the loop and parents need to understand. And if we don't communicate it clearly, we can very easily get the message of, well, I turned out just fine and I did it the old-fashioned way and look how perfect I am. We know in those moves, those instructional shifts, we've got to communicate so well with parents that they understand what we're doing. And so they need a system that's mobile friendly. They need a system where things like alerts can be sent out and those kinds of things. They need a system that it's easy for them to grasp. Here's my students. Here's where they are at this point in time. Here's what they need. And that parent communication and engagement is so vital. And I'm sure that everyone on us here would certainly agree with that because we have all lived that as educators. And we know when it doesn't work or it's hard to access, we're going to lose our parents in that regard and ultimately lose support. And so I'm sure that we can all see that, but that's a really great connection here that I know that Alma's done really well. Let me touch on one other gear there as well. And if we had more time, we could certainly spend going through probably each of the gears if we had time, but take a moment, if we would, to touch on the data and privacy. If we go to the next slide. When we look at data and privacy, and the ones for the elements there, these are the data ones that are focused. Of course, this gear also is around privacy, and I know you guys have done a lot of work in that area there as well. But when we look at data and privacy, and you look at things around data systems and policies and procedures, and we could certainly tell from a FutureReady and story after story after story of where things did not go well here, things fell apart, or the community trust was shattered because of something that wasn't done well, or there wasn't a procedure in place. And I'm sure you've all heard of those kinds of things happening there as well. But if we jump to the next slide, let's look at some Alma connections, if we would, for a moment, and some of those pieces. And one of the things that I'm excited for you to see, because for me, it was that thing that when I was that tech director and that principal, I was craving so bad. And we really tried to, how do we visualize this? What does this look like? And how can we bring these together for teachers so that that way they can really do things on the fly? I think for so long, we've talked about data-informed decision-making and teaching to be able to shift things on the fly. And I agree that that's great in theory. Show me where it works well in practice, and you'll have visualization tools and those kinds of things that make it possible. And so the tools there really support teachers in driving that. When you see things around the data systems, and you'll see some neat things coming up here in a moment around some of the procedures that can be to support teachers and guiding that ultimately for that third bullet to help drive that data-informed decision-making. And I know one of the things that Alma really respects is that whole child. And I'm so proud to see nationally this movement back to the whole child and taking a look at, you know, the interests and the passions and the strengths and trauma informed and cultural responsiveness and those kinds of things. So yes, data informed is important, but we all know it's never going to be more important than who that child is and losing sight of that. And I know it's something that Alma really values, and that's why I'm proud to be one of their board members. If you jump to the next slide real quick. I do want to take a moment just to, I couldn't do anything related to FutureReady without taking a 30-second commercial here to say, we'd love to see you in 2020. I know hopefully some of you on this call may have been at our Manchester event that we did in New Hampshire last fall, but we just launched our FutureReady Institutes for 2020. We also do a variety of workshops and those kinds of things. They are 100% free. FutureReady doesn't sell anything at all, but the way we do that is we're proud to call organizations and places like Alma and other places partners in that work. So that what we do, we certainly work to support you all through resources and tools like the FutureReady dashboard to support the great work you're doing every single day in schools. So I will turn it back over to the Alma team, but I will simply say thank you for what you all do each and every day to support those that we love and serve. Thank you for your work. So the Alma team, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thanks, Tom, for that overview and bridging the connection between FutureReady gears of curriculum instruction, data, and privacy, as well as community partnerships. I think this is a great segue. Unless, Gabby, there are questions that need to be addressed at this point in time before I move into the next section of our webinar.
Sure. The first question that I see, has Alma signed a DPA data privacy agreement, and are they on the New Hampshire approved list? I don't know if you're going to get to that at some point. And is the data kept in the United States? And that's what I'm seeing right now.
Okay, so just to quickly address the DPA question, we are in the process of refining the contract, and we will be signing a DPA in the near future for New Hampshire. So yes, that will be taking place. Anna, I don't know if you want to jump in on the second part of that question.
Sure. As far as hosting goes, Alma's hosted on Amazon Web Services. So that's where most of the web is hosted at this point, a lot of the systems that folks use on a daily basis. The hosting locations are around the globe, and that's intentional so that if something were to happen in one area of the globe, we're able to quickly have Alma active in another area. So kind of that fall over redundancy, if you will, around the globe. We can certainly address any, we can kind of control certain things as far as hosting goes as well. So if there were needs for US specific hosting, that's certainly something we can explore.
Great, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so I think this is a good point to segue over to take a look at some of the tools that Alma provides. And as you can see here, these are all our features within our platform. As Anna said earlier, Alma builds critical SIS tooling that significantly improves school operations and empowers educators to foster better student outcomes. Our platform streamlines the communication of information and gives educators back the valuable time that they need to focus on what's important, their students. Parents, students, and educators and administrators have reliable access to the information via our web-based portal or through our progressive web app. Relationships are really at the core of what we do. We want to build strong relationships with the community. And that's a nice tie-in, like I said, like Tom was saying earlier, in regards to partnership, community partnerships. So we build these tools to help tighten community relationships and to provide an awareness of what is happening inside your schools. Our competency-based platform, we support all educational practices. And, we are committed to competency-based and personalized learning. We support traditional practices as well, but we, like Anna had said earlier, we like to meet school districts where they're at and take them on the journey of where they want to go. Our competency-based platform supports the reporting of accurate student mastery levels through data visualization. Alma provides the opportunities for schools and districts to use their own homegrown competencies and proficiencies. State of New Hampshire, going around to many of the different schools this past fall, everybody's doing competency standards-based practices, but are uniquely tweaking their instance of it to specific competencies that they are creating. So Alma will let you upload your district's customized competencies and proficiencies for you to use throughout the system. If your district uses Common Core standards or Next Gen Science standards, we also provide those as well. As I said, New Hampshire schools are transitioning towards competency-based, and each school district knows what's best for their students. So having the ability to track and report out on their own competencies is important. From here, educators then can use our curriculum tracking and our curriculum tools so that they can create units and lessons and then track the number of times a competency has been addressed through assignments, as well as view how many students are at each mastery level within a specific assignment. Alma provides the flexibility to design customized grading rubrics to fit your district's needs. We also support many ways to calculate student mastery levels. So from the most recent score to decaying average or Marzano's power law, and we kind of had an a la carte menu that we like to call your choose your own adventure path to mastery level. Districts have multiple ways to be able to accurately determine student mastery. For report cards, anyone on your team can design a report card using our design template editor. Our report card design tool is built to meet your needs, so you can create the layout of your choice and add the information that you want just by simply dragging and dropping the components of your choice. We are unique in the respect that you do not need any coding background to be able to create a report card. It is a pretty easy process to go through to design whatever report card you would like, or as many as report cards as you would like. We provide that for you. Anna, is there anything else that you want to add into this at all that I have missed?
No, I think you did a great job and covered all the key talking points. But if there's any questions, we'd welcome.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so I have, you have the color coding red, yellow, green. Some districts do beyond mastery, like a blue. Is there a way to add a category to that?
The color coding itself is fixed, so it
Okay.
is the red, yellow, green, but you control which levels equate to each color.
Okay.
So that's something that you can customize with each gradebook.
And then there's a question about related to coronavirus. Does Alma have any remote learning tools? Are there any planned in the future?
You want to take that, Teresa, or I can jump in?
No, you can go ahead.
So Alma offers a really robust student and parent portal, which I think Teresa touched on briefly. It allows for sharing of resources through our platform with parents and students, also available on a mobile app. Furthermore, we have really tight integrations with LMS platforms like Google Classroom, Schoology, Canvas, where if you're collecting resources through those tools, teachers don't have to do duplicate data entry in order to sync those grades into their official gradebook, which would in this case be Alma. So that can really help in those cases. There are a number of features on our roadmap, kind of looking down the road, that'll even make working from home and doing school from home a little bit easier. One of the projects that the team is working on is being able to track when students are logged in, so you can actually factor that into attendance if you do have a blended program and want to know how much time students are spending in the portal working on their work. So that's coming, but we can certainly talk more about any specific needs in that regard.
Another question, is there a space also for professional learning and keeping track of that? If you sync with LMSs, do you also sync with micro-credentialing platforms?
Yes, to the latter question, as far as Active Directory goes, I'm assuming is what's being used. We also do single sign-on with Google, and we're adding Azure for single sign-on as well. And I apologize, Gabby, can you repeat the first part of that question?
Do you also have a way to put the staff and faculty in for professional learning?
Gotcha. So we don't offer a professional learning module. Teresa, I'm not sure, are there any ways that you've seen folks using the system for that?
Not currently. I mean, there's probably some outreaching ideas that could work within the system, and maybe you can address the fact that I don't know if creating a separate school for professional people in terms of tracking attendance and maybe some professional development, but you know, that's kind of a thought that's out there, but nothing that is in practice at this point in time.
Yeah.
And then there's a question, can data imports and exports be automated to sync with other systems?
Yeah, absolutely. The SIS is such a hub for that kind of data. So we are constantly syncing with third-party apps. I know a common one that we see in New Hampshire is Snap Health Center. Google Classroom is another good example of a kind of a deeper integration. But with most districts, I would say we're implementing anywhere between 5 and 20 or plus syncs with third-party tools.
Thank you.
Okay, so this was just a quick snapshot of how Alma's progressive tools align with future-ready frameworks, especially around the area of curriculum instruction and assessment. Tom, is there anything that you'd like to add at this point in time?
I would just simply say thank you again for the work that you do each and every day. I know your time is limited, so thanks for investing the time and joining us today.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Anna and Tom, for both joining in on part of this conversation today. Gabby, are we all set with the questions?
That's the last question that I'm seeing. So I think we're set with the questions.
Perfect, perfect. Well, I just wanted to say thank you, Gabby, to you and to CMTC for providing this opportunity to share a little bit about Alma and how it connects so nicely with the future-ready gears. On our first slide, we had the our contact information. I think we just switched over. So if anybody would like, be more than happy to reach out to the participants and send them some information as well.
Great. So thank you very much. I want to thank Teresa and Anna and Tom for sharing with our CMTC 19 attendees and their colleagues. You can, again, get a certificate of participation by emailing with Kimra at nhsaa.org. And we also are posting all of these recordings on the CMTC 19 YouTube channel. And so as we get those recordings up, we will change over the Zoom links to the YouTube links so you can check those out as well. We thank everyone for attending today. Hope your day goes well.